Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Focused with Focus Consulting Group. I'm Liz Severance, partner here at Focus, and joined by my partners, managing partner Keith Robinson and Brian Kozlowski, to talk about planning, being thoughtful about going into 2026. And many of you know that we've been in business 25 years, so we've done a lot of reflecting this year. And given the state of our industry, the geopolitical environment, it's been an interesting, thought-provoking time for us. Some things in our industry haven't changed. Competition's growing, pressure's building. But this year, the unpredictability and the uncertain environment has really impacted how firms have approached this past year. And it's been a really head down performance focused type of year. And we've really been in a short term thinking mentality. Um, we've been opportunistic grazers, right? Because we've gone where the food is. We haven't been really thoughtful about how we're going to approach the environment that we're in so that we don't let this short-termism and being opportunistic impact our futures as firms. So every year seems to be unprecedented. This year is also seemingly unprecedented. So, Keith, when you think about this unprecedented year with your 40 years in the business, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. It's interesting. That reminds me of a story that I think is really apropos to leaders in our world, the investment world, of what should I be thinking about? And so I would offer up this story as something for you to think about it. So there's a king, and the king has a beautiful daughter that whoever marries the daughter will ultimately become king. Narrows down the group of suitors to three and says, your final test for the opportunity to marry my daughter is to walk the straightest line possible to that mountaintop across this desert. And so the first suitor thinks about it and says, okay, I know how to do this. And he turns around and he starts walking backwards, looking at his footsteps in the sand to ensure that they are straight. And of course, gets to the top of the mountain and looks back, and the footsteps are far from straight, right? They're going left and they're going right. The second suitor sees that, learns from it, and says, I know how to solve this, and walks with head down, looking at the footsteps coming, taking very small, cautious steps to ensure that they're straight. Gets to the top of the mountain, looks back, and says, wow, I was all over the place. The third suitor watches the first two, puts his eyes on the mountaintop, never takes them off, and walks straight to the top of the mountain. Why is that an important story? Well, for me, I think we've done a lot of looking backwards. And I've got no problem, by the way, with reflection. I think it's a powerful tool to learn and develop and to grow, and to learn from that growth when you go left or when you go right. I also think that being planful matters, but we can never take our eyes off the goal. And I think this year, what we've seen from many of our clients is they've taken their eyes off the long-term investment goal, only to be tempted by short-termism, returns, a market that's been volatile yet rewarding. I think Brian, you said the market was up 18% this year, plus or
Yeah, it's about
minus,
that.
right?
Yep.
So pretty good market, but we've gotten trapped in looking at our steps. And thinking about our theme for this podcast is really about learning from what others have done, but then being planful about what our goal is and figuring out how we actually get there. Focus on the goal, but do it in a mindful and planful way by learning from the past and planning your steps for the future.
Yeah. So when you think about being planful and thoughtful and looking to that top of that mountain, what are some steps, given that people have had their head down um, for this year and really looking at their steps, what would you recommend that they do and think about as they're planning for 2026 and picking their heads back up?
Play the long game.
Mm.
We are in a business where you need to play the long game. So what do I mean by that? Watch for those distractions, those rocks in the desert that can trip you up or cause you to go left or cause you to go right that will get in your way. For example, and I'm sure, Brian, you've got a couple as well, AI.
Mm.
How do we use AI to play the long game as opposed to, gee, this is great. We're going to let a whole bunch of people go who are junior because AI will do that work. Well, that's certainly cutting your nose off to spite your face because you need the younger talent to grow and to develop and to nurture. So down the road, 10 years from now, you actually have a good bench of talent that can continue to bring your business forward. We saw that years ago. And I don't know if you remember, Liz, Jim and I talked about the barbell effect, and it was more of a demographic trend where we had really senior people and really junior people and nothing in between. And for the last, I would say, 7 years, organizations never planned for that barbell effect. And they didn't have a good, strong bench of middle management, middle leadership to then ascend to senior leadership. And they had to scramble. And they never really thought about the fact that we've got to solve for the middle. So this is history repeating itself. And I'm not picking on AI. AI can be an incredibly useful tool. We use it here, but I will say that it's not in place of your talent. And that's the trap. So that's one thing I see. I don't know, Brian, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I know it's funny. I was talking with a leader the other day and he asked me this very question of what are you guys seeing? And I said, it's interesting. Firm has two sets of assets, the assets you invest in, securities in your portfolio, and the people that sit in your office. And this year, very much so, has felt like there's been a 100% focus on the items in your portfolio and not very much of a focus on the folks that sit in your office. And Keith, you'll remember Keith and I were doing an engagement quite a few years ago, and we asked the CEO kind of what keeps you up at night. And I think Keith and I each had our own thoughts on what the answer was going to be. And it was quite different for both of us. And he was very honest. My biggest fear at night is the greatest assets we have sit in this office and they go down in that elevator every day. And there's no guarantee they're going to come back. And, I think we have to get back to that a little bit. So one of the things I would do, I'd take a temperature check on the organization. A lot has gone on this year. Look across the organization, do an organizational health survey, get a sense of what people are feeling. Where are folks in thinking about, hey, how am I aligning with the strategy? How are our values? Are our values still clear? Are we still aligned with our North Star? And then, of course, looking at rewards, which I know many of you are kind of, if you're not already, you will be knee deep in the next couple of weeks. It's more than the numbers that you are going to focus on between now and December 31st. It's more of the structure. Do we have the right structure in place to reward our talent, both intrinsically and extrinsically, to reward the assets we have? Because the the competition for talent just continues to increase. The best and the brightest are looking are looking for a place where they're going to feel comfortable. So the culture piece, that's the intrinsic element. They're gonna they will be rewarded in a way that's fair, transparent, and simple. And they're going to be continually challenged with the work that they're doing. And if you can go through and check all those boxes and feel confident that, hey, we're providing that opportunity for talent, then you're going to be a destination for that talent today and tomorrow. So it's investing in the assets, it's taking the temperature check, it's making sure the rewards plan. And I'll add one more thing, and it's the strategic view. Because when you're attracting talent and when you're keeping talent, they want to know that you have your eyes firmly on where you are today, but certainly where you got to be tomorrow and how realistic that is. And I think that's the piece we've probably fallen off a little bit is we get blinded by the headlines. We get blinded by things like private credit. I don't think I picked up an industry paper in the last 6 months where that hasn't been a topic of an article. That will apply and be relevant for some firms, but not all. So what are those things that leadership is thinking through that are going to help us to grow? How well are they communicating that? So to go back, those are the three things. It's the just a temperature check, and then helping from that temperature check, making sure that we're aligned on really three important pieces. The two pieces, the pillars of culture and strategy, and certainly the rewards piece in between.
A couple thoughts ran through my head as you were speaking about that. And I was brought back to one of my favorite bands is George Thorogood and the Destroyers. And George Thorogood wrote this song called Bad to the Bone. And what I would tell organizations as you think about next year, be bad. Be really, really bad. So what do I mean by that? I mean, understand your bench. That's the B. Understand your bench. How deep is our bench? How deep is our talent pool? Do we have a deep enough talent pool or have we let that slip away by not caring for people? How do you get that understanding? Assess, right? So there's your A in bad, right? So be bad. Know your bench, assess your bench. So there are all kinds of tools out there that will help you assess both technical skills as well as individual contributors and leadership skills. And all right, here comes a cheap commercial, and we have all of those. As a matter of fact, we're the only firm in the world that can assess technical competence. I can very comfortably say that. So assess what you have, because then you need the D in bad, which is develop. Play the long game. Development isn't something that happens overnight. Think about it. If you've ever learned a language, how long it took you to learn that language, to become fluent. You want to play the long game and have a fluency of talent that is technically skilled and IQ and emotionally skilled EQ, right? Really has good emotional intelligence. Those are the firms that are going to win in the future. And those are the firms that will be looking at the mountaintop and walking in that direction rather than walking and looking down with each individual step. So, as George Thorogood says, be bad to the bone and be diligent about how you actually understand what you have. Take a good inventory.
You don't need to do it blindly, right? You can actually find out and measure what it is that you need in order to be managing your portfolio, as Brian, was saying, both from a technical standpoint and from a talent standpoint.
The B, the A, and the D together add to an interesting mathematical equation, which is good succession. Because the
Mm.
one topic we have, I would say, probably we've got the most inbound requests on to discuss throughout the year of 2025 has been succession. And most people think of the financial side of it, the transaction of equity from one generation to the next. But the reality is that only happens if you've properly developed folks. Put them in places where they learn to be leaders, because owning equity is only part of the equation. And then putting them in positions where, from a compensation perspective, they are able to buy the equity. So it's a 1 + 1 sometimes equals 3 equation. But the firms that have been able to do that B, A, and D together have set themselves up well to be. And the one thing we hear when we do strategy is, what type of firm do you want to be? And we often hear we want to be an independent, ongoing generational firm. So we want to exist beyond the current generations, the second and third generations. Well, how do you do that? Well, you develop a bench, you continually assess them, so you tell them where you're going, and then you are able to develop them over time. And that's going to be a key piece of this is certainly the succession element. We're seeing it a lot with our wealth management clients, where those that and or firms we see even in the wealth management industry, firms that have not done a good job in doing that have less options when they think about what the future will hold than those that have. Okay, we've seen that, and certainly in conversations we've had certainly over the last 6 months with firms.
Absolutely. And we've seen all kinds of consolidation in the wealth management channel, right? In that wealth management space where the only option left to the founders or even the second generation is to either sell to private equity, in which case you often lose, well, you certainly lose a big chunk of your revenue, but you also lose some level of autonomy or potentially sell to a bigger firm. And that can be fine, by the way, because that can be accretive, provided it's a good marriage. Well, how do you know it's a good marriage? You need to assess the bride and the groom. You need to assess those two getting married and recognize, do they have a good common set of core values? Will they actually be a sustainable marriage over time? All of these things require really good assessment to understand where there's a really good fit. And often what we see is things don't go awry simply because of the finances. Things go awry because it's a bad marriage. They just weren't fit for each other. So where you get a 1 + 1 = 3, you actually get a 1 + 1 = -2 when the
Yeah,
marriage goes bad. And we've seen this a lot, especially in the wealth management part of the industry.
yeah, absolutely. It's so I'm a hockey fan. So there was once upon a time there was a hockey team called the Minnesota North Stars, which unfortunately have, well, they have now Dallas Stars. We'll put that off to the side. But the North Star is the piece. So I have a t-shirt that I like and people always comment on it, but it makes me think it's an interesting t-shirt because it makes me think of the firms we work with and the firms that are able to very eloquently talk about their North Star and how they don't deviate from it and how it continues to be part of who they are and part of who everybody is and why they attract and why folks are attracted to join there and why they stay there. And I think as I reflect back on this year, we have many firms have lost that North Star, that they've lost the focus on why they exist. Everything starts when we do strategy work. Everything starts with why do you exist? Why was this firm created? Because that's going to be what will take them to the next level. It'll help them to see more clearly about where they are as an organization and what's important. And it'll help them achieve where they want to go ultimately. Because if you spend too much time in the weeds, the industry is going to pass you by. And by the time you wake up, it's going to be too late to do anything about it.
Yeah. Let's stay with that theme for a moment, Brian, because I think it's really important because it's the intrinsic side of reward. And you mentioned firms that could be talent magnets, destination. I love that expression, a destination firm for talent. Many of you probably remember Dan Pink wrote a book called Drive. Three things were create talent destinations, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And let's take them in reverse order because Brian, you're really pulling on that thread, which is it starts with purpose. Two organizations that maybe come together with a similar purpose or the same purpose or the North Star, right? That's a marriage that will likely work. It's the ones that have different purposes that likely will not necessarily be able to be a talent destination or have a long-term ability to reach the mountaintop. So don't let distraction, move you from that goal, move you from the purpose. Ensure that you're looking at that mountaintop and make sure that whoever you are working with is looking at the same mountaintop, not one, three mountains over, because that'll be a problem. So
Yep.
purpose has to be aligned. It has to be aligned as organizations come together. It has to be aligned as organizations figure out where they're going to go and what their vision of success is. And then we get to autonomy, right? Because people are brought into an organization ostensibly to do what they do well. But the unfortunate thing is, as leaders, sometimes we micromanage, we push them down paths that they really shouldn't be going down, and we take away their autonomy. The idea is to hire and develop your talent and turn them loose. If they know where the top of the mountain is and they know what mountain you're going to, they will keep their eyes on the prize and they will get you there. So we have to create safety for them. We have to create the opportunity for them to learn and grow and develop. We have to assess them to understand what are their natural gifts and what are the places that they're maybe have some flat spots. And then we have to do the M part of this, which is mastery. So, people generally want to get better. Think about it. Things that you do outside of work, right? I play golf. Well, I play golf and I take lessons and I watch YouTube videos and I try and get better. I try and, reduce my handicap. If you play music, you practice, you want to get better. Nobody's paying us to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm spending a lot of money on golf balls and new golf clubs and gadgets. Why? Not because I really have the money to spend, but because I want to get better at something. It's the same idea and the same principle at work. Assess people, help them understand, let them try and fail. And this is the big idea. They got to learn from it, right? That's when turning around and looking backwards at your footsteps does make a difference. It does make sense. I'd encourage you not to walk backwards from there, turn around and then look at the goal again, but learn from those footsteps how you need to adjust. And that's the idea of mastery is how do we get better? Those three things, mastery, autonomy, and purpose, are the three biggest intrinsic motivators. They go way beyond anything that you can pay people, and they keep people there and they draw people to your organization. So we never really want to lose sight of that. And that is a long game. I've talked about playing the long game. That is the long game that we need to play in order to get where we want to go.
One of the feedback we often get from our reward survey is we as an industry, asset and wealth management together, are very poor at development. We share that data point with leaders. They get quite frustrated because their feedback is, we've got a plan in place. I don't understand why we're getting this feedback. And the reality is we're just not doing a great job of communicating it. We're not a great job and also of embracing it. Because we get so focused, so going back to the short-termism of our day-to-day work, we don't pick our heads up, going back to what Liz said, and look at where we want to go. And so the leading firms, the best firms, create a culture focused on development where folks know, hey, this is what's in scope. This is what I can do. Here's the time that's made available to me. And here are the things I need to do in my career to get to that next level. It's providing that clear vision. And that's what, again, going back to talent attraction and talent magnets, that's what keeps folks there because they can see how I can develop my career in this organization and how it ties back to where the firm wants to go. It's one big puzzle with a bunch of pieces that go together. And if folks can see how the pieces move together and they can say, hey, I'm here and the firm is invested in me, that goes a long way to certainly retention and obviously attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Captain, let's land this plane.
So we've been talking about quite a few things, and as you can see, we like to talk in threes, right? We're bad, be bad, right? Mastery, autonomy, purpose. So as we think about the things, the big ideas of what you need to think about in 2026, Brian, what's one thing that you want people to think about going into 2026 to pick their heads up and make things happen?
Yeah, I'll go back to strategy for a second because for me that's such an important it's such an important pillar of an organization. Yeah, and I would go in two parts of it. I'd go first, if you don't have one, certainly start to develop one and think about where you want to be in 3 years and think about how it impacts all of your stakeholders, so your clients, your employees, and owners. So that's the first piece. If you do have one, talk about it, and talk about it some more. Strategy is a living being. It's not just a document that you put together and put up on a shelf and look at every couple of years. It has to be part of your fabric. It has to be part of who you are. It has to be part of the conversations. A strategy is successful when everyone can feel like it's a part of them and they can see part of themselves in it. So if you've got a strategy, communicate it and continue to communicate and make it a big part of who you are, making and make sure folks know the role they play in it. Because as leaders, that will help you down the road achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. So if I'll and just to go in summary and strategy, if you don't have a strategy, certainly start to develop one. If you've got one, make sure you're communicating, make sure folks know the role that they play in it.
Keith, how about you? What's one big takeaway that people need to take away?
Yeah, I'll look to the other pillar that we talk about, which is culture. Not every culture is right for every person. So culture as a gating mechanism to who actually gets to be part of your organization matters. And that means you have to really understand what your culture truly is. It's one thing to say, oh, this is on our website, but do you actually practice it? Well, if you really want to know if you practice it, do a diagnostic, understand what's going on in your organization. That's something we certainly can help you with. But remember that if you want to be a destination employer, that you have to have a culture that people feel attracted to, which means they have to feel safe. They have to have mastery, autonomy, and purpose. They have to really embrace your vision of success, where it is you want to go. And the most important thing, how you want to get there. How do we work together to achieve what it is we want to achieve? Not just now, not just in 2025, but at 2030, at 2035, and down the road. And your culture and your strategy are the two pillars that get you there.
Thanks. And for me, my big idea here is that keep your eye on the ball of that North Star, right? Find out what your people are thinking, feeling, so that you can achieve and you can continue to march to the top of the mountain with only looking back to reflect and learn, and then again, keeping your eye to that top of the mountain. Ask your people, find out what they're thinking and feeling. It has been an interesting year for people. Make sure that you know what they're thinking and feeling as you move towards the mountain so that everybody is walking together. Thanks for joining us. We will be back with you in a few weeks to continue our talks about what you need to think about in 2026 and beyond.